One of the most notorious serial killers and criminals in American history was John Wayne Gacy. He was a disgusting killer who is known to have had at least 33 victims, and he shockingly performed at children's hospitals and events as a clown, and he was known as a killer clown. His murders occurred inside of his home in Chicago, and he would lure his victims back to his home, and would then coerce them into handcuffs, saying he was about to perform a magic trick. But then his bloody actions and violent acts would result in the deaths of his victims. He was one of the most deadly serial killers in American history, and was sentenced to death for his crimes. He remained on death row for 14 years, until on the 10th of May 1994 he was executed in Illinois. Join us today as we look at the execution of John Wayne Gacy, the Killer Clown, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. John Wayne Gacy was born on the 17th of March 1942, and he was raised by an alcoholic father that would beat him with a strap if he misbehaved. His father also was violent towards his mother, and Gacy was alienated at school, and he had a heart condition, and his father saw this as a weakness. He worked as a manager of a fast food chain in the 1960s, and then worked as a building contractor in Chicago in the 1970s. He was a man who was at the time considered well liked in the community, and he was active in a number of political groups, and he was married and divorced twice, and he had 2 biological children. He was also a member of the Jolly Joker Clown Club in Chicago, and he was often seen performing at children's parties and other events as Pogo or Patches the Clown. This would later go on to give him the reputation as a killer clown. He would lure his victims with the promise of work or other benefits, and he would then torture, assault and often strangle his victims with his bare hands or with a rope. He was an imposing man, and once was noted as saying, "Clowns can get away with murder." He was sentenced to 10 years in prison in 1968 for assaulting 2 boys, but 2 years later he was released on parole, and before he was arrested again the following year. Further accusations by young boys were levelled against Gacy, and he was questioned about the disappearances of other boys and men. In the mid-1970s, he said this was his cruising years, where he committed most of his killings. In December 1978, a 15-year-old victim went missing, and it was said he'd gone to meet Gacy to discuss a job, but then 10 days later a police search of his home turned up evidence of many different crimes, including murder. It's believed that he committed his first murder in 1972, murdering a 16-year-old boy. The police kept their eye on John Wayne Gacy, and then investigated, and human remains were found in a crawl space beneath the house, and further trenches revealed human bones. Many of those could not be identified, but then he confessed to over 30 murders. Gacy's trial started on the 6th of February 1980, and there was much debate whether he should have been declared insane, and then sent and incarcerated inside of a mental health facility. But John Wayne Gacy said the murders had been committed by a different personality. There was much investigation by mental health experts as to try and work out his capacity. But the jury would deliberate for a short time, and he was found guilty of committing 33 murders, and was given 12 death sentences and 21 life prison sentences. He had been sentenced to death, and it was a lethal injection, which would be the way of the killer clown, and the way he would go. On the 9th of May 1994, he was transferred to Stateville Correctional Centre in Crest Hill for execution. That afternoon he was allowed a private picnic with his family in the grounds of the prison. He was allowed a final meal, and he ordered, for this, a bucket of KFC and a dozen fried shrimp, along with French fries, strawberries and a Diet Coke. He spent the evening in prayer with a priest who gave him the last rites, before he was taken into the Stateville execution chamber for his death. As mentioned, he was to die by lethal injection, but things did not go well. The plan would have seen John Wayne Gacy quickly administered the deadly cocktail of medication, but before the execution began, the chemicals which were used to effect the execution solidified and crystallised, and with this they blocked up the IV tube, which was used to administer the chemicals into Gacy's arm. He had been strapped to a wooden bench, but as witnesses watched on, the anaesthetic drug was administered to John Wayne Gacy's IV line, but this did not go to plan. The line as mentioned got clogged, and nothing else could get in. Because of this, the doctors did not really know what to do. They briefly shut the curtains of the execution chamber to keep the eyes of the public away, whilst they worked out what had happened. Anesthesiologists would later blame the prison officials, and they said they set the equipment up the wrong way, which caused the tube to block. It took 18 minutes for John Wayne Gacy to be killed, and the lethal cocktail had been administered with a new tube that was fetched to complete the job. A prosecutor at his trial would say that he would receive an easier death than any of his victims, and his final words were allegedly when he told the prison officials to kiss his backside. Crowds had gathered outside the prison where the sentence was being carried out, and around 1,000 people waited for the news that Gacy had been killed. His death was confirmed at 12:58 a.m. on the 10th of May 1994, and following his death his brain was removed and was then given to a witness for the defence, who interviewed the killer to try and work out personality traits of violent murderers. But John Wayne Gacy was a killer clown who was responsible for at least 33 murders, and it's believed that he was the man behind more killings. It's believed that he was a diagnosed psychopath, and he did not express any remorse for his crimes. He did say that killing him would not make up for the loss of his victims, but he's gone down in history as a terrifying killer clown. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.